This is The Art of Startup War, and I am your sensei, Brian MacMahon. Now, in Season 1 and 2, I got inside the minds of startup investors. In Season 3, I brought in entrepreneurs to share their startup journey. Here, in Season 4, we combine both so you can hear investors critique the investment value proposition of individual companies. You're going to hear how investors make decisions to invest in startups, what makes a great entrepreneur, and how billion-dollar companies are built. So tune in every Tuesday, 10 a.m. on all the major platforms. You can empower your tribe by sharing the podcast, and remember to subscribe, rate, review, and leave us a comment. Good morning, it is Brian here from Expert Dojo. You are on The Art of Startup War. I have an incredible company here in the cybersecurity space who are changing the face of how companies will deal and transfer data. Absolutely phenomenal. We invested in this company. I personally, I'm going to move away from the we and towards the I. I could not be happier that we put money into Kelvin. I am 100% sure, not 90, not 95, but 100% sure that this company is going to fly all the way. And it's going to fly all the way for a couple of reasons. Number one, it solves an absolutely massive problem that companies have, from universities and educational folks all the way through to some of the largest enterprises in the world. Number two, the team, as you're going to find out on the podcast today, led by Kelvin, is off the friggin' charts. Like, when you talk about execution, it is right there and smack there. So Kelvin, have I said enough nice things about you?
Yes, Brian, I really appreciate what you've said about us. It's wonderful to hear.
Dude, you're awesome. Hey, listen, the great truth in the world is when you hand money to someone or when you hand equity to someone, and because then it goes beyond words, it goes beyond like the usual BS of you're great and he's great and she's great and everybody's going to be good. The very first moment I spoke to you in our very first Zoom room, I said to you, I want you in our cohort. I don't know if you remember the very
Yes, I do.
first
I do
one.
remember that. Yes, and it's ego boosting to hear things like that.
Yeah, I'm like, don't you dare not come in with us because we're going to work our ass off on top of the money that we give to you. And it was for a multitude of reasons. It's because you see people and you think this isn't the usual rhetoric. This is someone who is really changing the world in a massive way. So tell us a little bit about Broadbridge and tell us about why what you're doing is so important. And let's go backwards and forwards on that a little bit.
Okay, that sounds good. And thank you again, Brian. So Broadbridge Networks, we help organizations run more efficient and effective security operations. That was the whole reason why this company was founded. And the core problem that we see people facing is this explosion in network data. And everyone is familiar with this. If you look at some of the numbers, there are over 300 billion emails that are sent every day, and organizations have to deal with their intellectual property being moved in and outside of their networks. At the same time, we're seeing a major cybersecurity talent shortage where there are over 3 million open positions in the cybersecurity professional in cybersecurity.
By the way, why do you think that is? Why do you think there's so many open? Because it's not like it's a secret that this is going to be a huge thriving industry for the next, well, forever. It could be because, sorry, just to contextualize this, for everybody outside, for us in the venture capital space, we look for trends. So
Right.
when you see wireless, back in the olden days, it was really easy. There was a wire, right? And you had like an end point and you had a beginning point. And it was like, if somebody's going to break into the wire, you got to be damn good because like you have to do it through the server or do it through something that connects to the server. It's really hard. But as soon as wires went away, then the Wild West came back again. And now
Right.
suddenly everybody's wireless. The wireless speeds are quicker. There's new applications coming out all of the time. We have no defense, right? So it just surprises and fascinates me why every school is not training everybody to be in cybersecurity because it's the next frontier.
Yeah, and to answer your question, one of the main problems in cybersecurity is the fact that it's an afterthought for most people. I often speak to people about cybersecurity, and they say, "Well, why why do we have so many hackers attempting to break into networks and they're successful? Well, I said, well, security is an afterthought. People build applications, they build networks, and then they think about layering security on top of it. And most people also envision cybersecurity as insurance, something that they need to have in place just in case something happens. But as we're seeing, and it's coming up almost every week, there's these major infiltrations into these network environments. So number one is the fact that cybersecurity is often an afterthought, and
Mm.
so people don't put the investment they need into cybersecurity up front, and that trickles down. It's the same thing that we see happening inside of our training facilities and our universities. We are not putting cybersecurity training at the forefront of the types of people we want to put into the industry, and so that's why we have this talent shortage.
And this is terrible for the world, but actually, it's great for you.
Yes, it is great. It is wonderful for us because we see it as a major opportunity to one to help people better understand their data by equipping them with the right types of tools, and two to help them more effectively use the people they have in place. So we accept that you don't have enough people to watch all the data. So what we're going to give you is tools to help you do that, and you see this across many industries where the tools can make people better at doing their jobs.
Beautiful. And then there are multiple areas to go after, right? You like the education space.
Yes, I like the education space a lot. One, because they're often further behind your typical commercial environments. And so if you look at the financial space, they always have very large security teams because it's very important that they protect their reputations and they protect our money.
Right.
But often in the educational space, they're competing with the financial companies, they're competing with the tech companies, and they just can't pay the same salary levels. So they're left to taking the scraps, for a better way of saying it. And so they are the ones that really have the need for this type of solution right now.
And they have tremendous amounts of data.
Yes, and they have tremendous amounts of data, especially in the research organizations. If you look at what we're going through right now with the pandemic, the research organization within universities that are leading the way to identifying a cure to COVID-19.
I
And
didn't realize that. So within the universities themselves, they're actually tripling down on trying to research and actually find cures for COVID. Incredible.
right. Right. And so they're dealing with a tremendous amount of data. And often a lot of this data is very sensitive. And this data needs to be shared with different researchers across the globe. And if you're going to have sensitive information that needs to be shared with different researchers across the globe, and it's voluminous, it's scans, it's scans of genomes, scans of patient imagery, those type of things, it needs to be secured well. And so that's why we're targeting in this area.
Amazing. And actually they all, yeah, because if anybody steals it, then they're in terrible trouble. So you've got actually a combination of the worst possible factors.
Right.
You've got folks who would be good people, but maybe not capable to compete against some of the hackers that are out there. You've got systems which are legacy systems. You have got data which is incredibly privacy driven. Like they just desperately need people not to break into it. And then you have the whole world trying to break in and trying to take it from them. Because God forbid, it's a lot easier to just steal this stuff than go and find your own cure for COVID. So what do you do? How do you fix that?
Yeah, so what we focus on doing is first, number one, giving them a scalable solution, a solution that can meet their data needs that they have today, as well as the data needs that are going to come in the future, because the data is not going to stop growing. And so what we want to do is allow them to put a system in place that's going to grow with them. And then number two, we focused on having what we call a human first interface. We don't want to create this tremendous learning curve for people to understand how to use our product. And so we built an interface with a user interface that has that allows a user to very quickly and intuitively understand how to configure the device, how to monitor the device, how to use the solutions at a whole without having to go through hours and hours of training. And then number three, we have AI embedded in it. So we're using analytics embedded in our system in a way that's very easy for people to understand. So the insights that we provide on the data that's flowing to the network is very easy to understand. So you don't need a degree in data science in order to use the platform.
And what's the output for the universities?
So from the university standpoint, one, their data is completely secured end to end. No matter the size of the volume that's going through, their
Incredible.
data is completely audited, so they know exactly who sent the data, where the data went, who else touched the data, so they have a full audit trail of all the data. They also have full analytics, so they can understand how that data is being sent on the network, and or if anyone else from outside the network is trying to access that data.
Incredible. And is anybody else out there providing this solution?
So there are a lot of people that are providing different types of security solutions, and there are your traditional incumbents in the in the industry. But what's happening is they're not providing the solutions at this level of scale. So they were designed for a previous age. You mentioned earlier how
Right.
when we had wired networks, we had a specific type of problem securing those networks. And then as wireless came out, then it was the Wild West, and we had new problems. Well, when we had small amounts of data that we were dealing with, and most of that data stayed inside the walls of the university, then things were they weren't easy, but they were easier than today to handle. But now we have these very large pipes. We have connections to the cloud. We have connections to other universities. We have connections to partners. We have connections to the government. We have all these different connections, and so you need to be able to deal with all those different connections and be able to secure the data as it moves through your network and see who's accessing that data in real time. And so that's the type of solution that we're providing to the industry.
Incredible. And then you've already started working with some of the universities already, right?
Yes, we're working with some local universities here in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, and they're really excited about what we're doing, and we're really excited to be working with them because they are also on the cutting edge of what's going on during this pandemic.
So I think everybody gets the idea of how important it is what you're doing. And again, I always love this point of the podcast because it sounds like it's like we've built it, we're awesome, it's great, it's easy, our team pulled it all together, but it's not, right? To
Right.
actually to begin, if you go right back to the beginning, like bring me through some of the pain, personal and business, to actually take such a groundbreaking product to market just to make it exist.
So I think you know a lot of the experience that myself and my team bring to the table. This is my seventh startup. My previous startup to this was in the big data security analytics space, and they were acquired by a large organization. And a lot of what we learned in the past is that often when these types of solutions are brought to the market, there's this tremendous learning curve. And so when you're trying to bring something to the market, people are hesitant. A new idea, a new way of doing things,
Right.
a new technology, people are hesitant to embracing that new technology. And so one of the first hurdles that we had to overcome was taking something that's really sophisticated and it's using some sophisticated algorithms and technology and making it simple so people could understand it. So we actually spend a lot of time going over our messaging and making sure that our messaging is simple and easy to understand, and at the same time making sure the way that we present the technology is simple to understand. Because the number one thing I learned from my previous startup I was at is that if you're using AI to a lot of people is, for lack of a better word, is voodoo. You have
Sure.
to take away that idea of voodoo from it and help them to understand that AI is something that's going to equip you, that's going to give you the right types of tools that you need in order to be successful at your job. And one of the ways you do that with AI is how you develop your user interface so they can step by step see exactly how the AI engine is making decisions and how it comes up with its insights that it's going to provide or the recommendations
Which
that
will
it's going to provide.
benefit them.
Right.
So, but actually, take me even a step further back. This is for me, especially when you're on seven startups. Like this is like relationships. You have your first relationship, and you're like, yeah, I really like that person. Oh man, person wasn't funny at all. And then the second relationship is like, I want a funny person. And then you're like, okay, third relationship, I want someone who actually smile. I want somebody who actually looks a certain way that I like people that they look. And the next relationship, oh, I want someone who can actually have a conversation in the evening so I'm not bored if like after the first 5 years when all the passion runs out. So I think it's like that in startups. So you went through the first six startups. You got
Yes.
to this startup. Like what was the genesis of driving this particular idea to be the one that you're going to choose after all of that previous experience to be the very best that you can do over the next 5 to 10 years?
When when you know what? I think all great startups start with listening to your your network of people who will potentially be your customers talk about their problems.
Hmm.
And you hear in our industry, you hear all kinds of different problems that people are facing from a security standpoint. And this one particular problem of being able to secure data and analyze data at scale really resonated with me. It was something that I said, you know what, I can do that. I can show them how to do that. I have many ideas on how we should be able to go ahead and secure their networks and provide them with the relevant information they're looking for. And that, that's just the beginning. That's the actually, in somewhat, that's the easy part.
That,
But
that's
then you
the
need to
that's the 11 o'clock in the bar, right? It's like,
right.
ah.
Yeah, this is the aha moment. And then there's okay, how do we make this really happen? And when I start, then you start looking at, well, what's actually happening behind the scenes? Why are they having so much trouble with the things that they have? And we looked at CPU technology and we saw that there were some limitations with CPU technologies, and all of the incumbents are based on traditional CPUs they use to do the analysis. And so we said, you know what, we need a newer technology. And I started talking to my co-founder Jonathan. Jonathan's background is in high performance computing, and he has a background in media and entertainment. So he's used to designing high performance computing architectures based on GPU technologies. And we started talking about how we could leverage GPUs to do analytics. And we said, you know what, it's time for a new technology to be used in the industry for cybersecurity. And so we embraced GPU technologies. And then we started talking to other people within the industry about, well, why is it so difficult? Why is it so hard for you to triage all of the different alerts and events you get from the systems that you have? And they said, well, it's hard to pull all the different pieces of information. We have all these disparate systems around the network that are providing information. It's hard to pull it all together. I said, and they said, if there was a better interface that would allow me to very easily see the relationship between data objects, then that would be great. And so we said, oh, wait a minute, we could do that. We could give you an interface that allowed you to very easily connect the different disparate pieces of information together and understand them in a more meaningful way. And so you just start by tackling each one of those hurdles one by one to the point where you have a full solution that you can take to customers and talk to customers about, and they start saying, yes, that's what I'm looking for. If you build that, I will buy. That I will replace what I have with what you have. And so that's what we had to overcome first. We had to overcome, um, how do we make this idea that we have, this concept that we have, something real that we can take to market, along with all the other things. How do we hire the right type of talent? Because in this market, even getting the right types of engineers with the right type of experience, it's difficult. I'm a minority myself. Getting investment as a minority is difficult. So that's why I was just so pleased with the early conversations that we had when we approached Expert Dojo. But you just get over these hurdles one by one, and
It's
conquer them
true.
one
And
by
actually,
one.
you mentioned a minority hurdle, and you and I had the conversation before everything. But what's happening right now is obviously awesome. I don't think either of us ever imagined that it would be happening. Now, the longitude of it will measure that within time. And you and I spoke way before that, and way before that, I always felt, look, there's just one thing that's important. If for America to survive as an entrepreneurship nation, it's greatness. As you're describing, and that's what I saw in you like, the first time we spoke. And so for me, it's either the VCs will see it straight away, or their prejudice will stop them from seeing it straight away, which is absolutely fine because they'll see it in 6, 12 months' time. And by that stage, you'll be doing so well that you can decide if you want to go with those particular VCs or not. Like the control will come over to you. It always comes down to greatness and execution, those two things combined. And I love
Right.
how you're even describing how you got started. It's like listening to a geek version of the Avengers, and you've just describing Endgame, right? So we got together and we thought, We can defeat them. We can do it together. And now I'm
Yeah.
expecting like Spidey to come in and a bunch of other Avenger heroes to come through, because everybody then gets behind that big vision of how you save the world in your own way,
Right.
which is incredible. And now you must feel like Superman because you've built it, you're getting validation, you've got the universities that are really loving what you're doing, you're building a team. We're getting ready now for the big, larger scale investment push, which, I'm happy to push out in beast mode and let the VCs find your greatness. But genuinely, it's easier when we don't have to deal with any prejudice in the first place, and we can just get these guys not being idiots. And I think we're in that place right now. We're seeing fund after fund are coming out and saying, yeah, we don't have anything to be proud of. And I don't even mean just like minorities. I mean minorities, females, anything that's not the usual people who went to the same school that the VCs went to school with.
Correct.
It's a good world for you.
Yes, it is. It's a wonderful time, and and there's no shortage of cybersecurity problems. So it's a great time when you combine that with what we're seeing going on in the investment industry.
So what comes next?
So, what comes next is execution. So it's a rigid focus on delivering on our promises that we've made to our customers, and then getting the type of validation we need to grow out the product. When we started thinking about this, we were just thinking about, okay, we're going to create a problem. We're going to create a product that looks at network data, analyzes network data, secures network data. As we're talking to more and more customers, they themselves are now looking at our product in different ways and looking at different areas they can put our product in. And that has always been the next aha moment in the successful startups I've been at previously, where customers have embraced and ingested your messaging, and they're saying, you know what, I could use this to solve not only problem A, I can use it to solve problem B, problem C,
Wow.
problem D, but you haven't thought about those because you don't have their business context. You don't have all the knowledge of all their problems. So that's what's next, is start to solve those other problems that we see that customers have within their environments with the same platform.
And you bring up such a great point. I have a good friend here locally who's a VC, and he was talking to me about how when Robinhood came up as an investment opportunity, he passed on it.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
and he passed on it, and he's like, Brian, I passed on it. There was two things that I needed to look at as a VC, and I know this, and I know I made a mistake because I didn't look hard enough at the first, and I looked too hard at the second without understanding the point where it moves to phase two. Right now, the first point was the team, and Robinhood's team, for people who invested or just people who know the company, it was an amazing team, right? But the second point was the reason he turned it down was because they were doing fantasy stocks. That was their first iteration was, hey,
Right.
folks are going to really want to they want to be able to bet on pretend Microsoft shares. And he's like, no, they're not. they're not. That's just not going to be a thing. But what he didn't take into account is that first idea, like you're creating something that has never existed before. It's never.
Right.
I sometimes say when I'm talking about this that, and yeah, I even say it with Expert Dojo when we first started. Every single company, we don't pivot and we don't change. Every company starts 13% complete. Maybe you could compare it to a baby, right? We started
Right.
13% complete. It's like babies don't really pivot to becoming older people, right? They just learn stuff and they hear stuff and they're like, oh, okay, cool. Like everybody's telling me I should walk. I'm going to try walking. And it's like, okay, great. I just happened to be with this group of people and they ended up, doing gymnastics. So I want to do gym. And you follow the best knowledge. And then depending on how great you are as an executor, you then move forward. So Robin Hood obviously did that, heard from enough people that a fantasy stock business wasn't going to be great. And then they created one of the best financial trading platforms on the planet today. And their valuation reflects that. And you can
Right.
give that, you can say that with Slack, and you can say it with everybody almost, right? Everybody goes to that phase. But the beginning part is to get to that 13%. That's the
Right.
hard thing. Like you get to that 13% and you say, okay, now I'm ready. So come on, help me get to 14%. And 14%, it even if they say to me that this doesn't work for what they want it to work for, that's still 14% because I can move to the next point. So we never talk about this, and I'm really glad you brought it up, because the earlier you get to that point where folks are telling you what it's going to be incredible for, the
Yes,
earlier you move down that funnel of phase two to have a product fit which is just off the charts.
correct. I 100% agree with you.
Where do you see it going? Based on the initial feedback that you've heard back from people, like what are the really exciting points that you can talk about here?
Yeah, so let me talk about one in particular that really that I'm starting to hear. Um, I'm starting to hear more often. So, from a human first interface standpoint, and the way we created our AI, we wanted to make sure that we provided both canned models, which means that we have uh, artificial intelligent models that just run and provide information to people, and give our customers the ability to build their own customized model. But even with our canned models, what we do in our user interface is we show them completely how it works, step by step, how it brings in the information, what it does with that information, how it analyzes the information. And the thing that we're hearing from a lot of people is that since this is wide open, is it restricted to the type of information you bring in? I said, no, we're bringing in network data. It's different types of network data, but you can bring in any other data that you'd like to bring in there. And so we hear from people, you know what, maybe we could do this for risk analysis, or we could do this for predictive analytics. I said, the system's open. We designed it in a way that once you understand how it works, you can bring in whatever data you like, and that data will be run through the algorithms the same way any other data will be run through it, and you'll get the predictions, the insights, the recommendations. And he's said, this is great. We could use it for many different business units. So we see the organizations taking our product and introducing it to other groups within the organization and saying, hey, maybe you want to look at this as your new fraud or risk platform. Or maybe you over this side, you want to look at it for predictive analytics for the network, the other parts of the network environment, or from an IoT perspective. So we see people saying, well, can we use this for IoT, the Internet of Things, where we have all these sensors all over the place? Can we use it to analyze that data? Yes, it's data. So once you design a fundamentally sound foundation, you can build on that, and that's what we've done. It's fundamentally a sound, scalable data collection and analysis system that you can build upon. And so that's where we see things going in the future. People are going to say, okay, we'd like to see what you're doing in the risk space, what you're doing in the fraud space, and we're going to address them. We're going to provide our solution to them.
It's so fun talking to you. It's like it's like being on an episode of Sherlock Holmes, I feel like Watson, right? And you speak about a topic which most folks who don't know about this topic would find it relatively boring. And you speak about this topic like it's searching for the holy grail, that you need to go through all of these clues and get past these trials and tribulations. And as you pass each one, you're given like a small prize, which is greater knowledge, right? And then that
Right.
brings you deeper and deeper into the matrix. Let's bring another one in, where you just get deeper in, and that's what makes brilliant. Now, it does mean that your life partner has got to understand and love artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and deep enterprise tech, or it's going to be a tough 30 or 40 years. But it's also phenomenal from a corporation's perspective, listening to how you think about this, because you can tell you're all in. This isn't just a whim that you're trying to maybe cure and fix something that's a problem. This is your whole life.
Yes. And that's the way I've been trained to look at startups. You don't you don't participate in 7 startups, 5 of which were very successful, unless you go all in. It's what I've learned over the last 20 years. You have to go all in, and I think that's also what makes entrepreneurs different. Successful entrepreneurs different from other people. That ability to deal with risks and the ups and downs, and the ability to commit even in the face of a lot of obstacles and hurdles. And so, yes, I'm all in.
It's also a beautiful gift to be given, and I believe I've been given that gift as well. I mean, I wake up like this morning. I'm up at 4 o'clock, 4:30 in the morning. I get out of bed. I go downstairs. I start working. I'm thinking, oh man, this is amazing. I have all these phenomenal puzzles and clues and prizes if I get the clues right. And then I get to the end of the day and I'm working with these incredible creative people. And if you're given that gift, you just live life happily all the way through. Like bad stuff will happen, good stuff will happen. But I do think as an entrepreneur, if you have it, man, it makes this journey so awesome because you just every single day is a phenomenal gift. And you know, and I could tell it from you the first time we spoke, you have it and you live it every single day. And every day you come home at the end, I'm sure, with more knowledge, irrespective of like other folks will focus on the fact that hey, they're selling shoes in Africa and you know a bunch of folks don't have shoes. And then you look at it and say, you know what, the opportunities here are absolutely endless. And you know how much I learned about shoes today?
Yeah.
That's it, man. That's where I want to go. I want to go all the way through with you. Hey, so tell us, just to finish up, for everybody listening, obviously I want to get your make sure everybody's got your details and come after us. Now you're speaking to VCs now. I think for the first 3 quarters of this show, we've been talking to everyone who is a CIOs, CTOs, folks who are in the cybersecurity space, and they're getting it and they're realizing it. And genuinely, for those of you listening to this, if you are not calling Kelvin and his team afterwards to have them look at your systems and see how they can actually make them better, man, you're crazy. So I think hopefully you've all got that from this point so far. Let's speak to the VCs for a second. What does the journey look like over the next 5 to 10 years?
So, to the investors that are out there, we are at an inflection point. You're just seeing the beginnings of it. You're seeing how data, the explosion in network data. You know about the talent shortage. You know that there's a lot of these new technologies around AI, but this is an inflection point. The way data is handled, the way data is analyzed is going to fundamentally change. The types of systems that are going to be developed to handle data are going to fundamentally change. And the names that you heard in the past, like Intel and AMD, who led they led the charge around building computer systems or being that the core computer systems. That's going to change, and you're going to hear more from companies like Nvidia in the GPU space, and more from companies that build these high performance processors in other spaces, coming into the data space, the data analytics space, and revolutionizing it. And we are a part of that already. We are an NVIDIA Inception partner. NVIDIA is inviting us into their community, their ecosystem. Making so many different introductions inside of their ecosystem, because they know that the world is going to change. It's going to change fundamentally. We have 5G coming. Everyone knows 5G is coming, but I don't think a lot of people have thought about the fact that 5G is a 100x change in the amount of data from a wireless standpoint. Well, who's going to monitor and watch all of that information? It's our type of companies that are going to do that. The types of companies that have thought about it and are building from the ground up to address the new world that's about to come into play. And this is not just for the education market. This is for every market, healthcare market, financial market, the for the government. So the world's about to fundamentally change. And if you are really interested in being a part of a company that is already building a solution for that new world, then we are the company you need to talk to.
I agree. And I see, just to finish, I want to finish it up with a very strong number, actually. But I saw years ago, obviously, the social revolution came through, and I think the influence revolution came after that. And I truly, truly believe, which is why we're so all in on companies like yourself, is this is the data revolution. We actually
Yes.
we have hit the point right now, and the next 5 years are going to be absolutely terrifying, but full of opportunity. So if you're saying that the VCs are looking at you and they're saying, okay, we can see that this is a great company, we can see it's a phenomenal founder, we agree with Brian that this is going to be the data revolution, we are actively investing in companies like this, what revenue do you believe your company can grow to over the next couple of, let's say, 5 years? In 5 years' time, if you were going to look at what your company revenue would look like for annual revenue, what would you hazard a guess at
we will we will be a 100 million, $150 million company at that point,
in revenue?
conservatively.
I like how you broke that down to all of the syllables. It's like conservatively. That's it.
Yes.
VCs, you heard it here. CIOs, CTOs. This is the company you need to be engaged in. Kelvin, I said it at the start. I'll say it again right now. I'm the happiest little Irish guy alive that we invested in your company, and that I'm personally alongside with you on the journey, and we will not let you down, my friend.
Well, I'm happy to be on this journey with you, Brian, and you can hear my excitement. I think this is going to be great.
How can folks
Yeah.
contact you? I don't want to forget that.
Yes, so folks can go to our website, www.broadbridgenetworks.com, and find out more information about us. And there are links there where you can connect with us via email or just send an email to info@broadbridgenetworks.com.
Thank you, sir. That, my friend, is a wrap. Thanks for joining us. If you love the podcast, please empower your circle by sharing these stories. The Art of Startup War is brought to you by Expert Dojo. And remember, we invest in startups, $50,000 checks. Make sure you apply on our site if you are one of those great entrepreneurs looking to bring your company to the next level. As far as the Art of Startup War is concerned, we are back every single Tuesday at 10 a.m. So remember, check out the new episodes. If you want to find out what the investors think, check out season 1 or 2. But make sure you join us every single week.